So with some youth entrepreneurs in Africa, and we have empowered them to establish their own biocontrol production enterprises. This is called as Dream Team Tanzania, and also we build the capacity of national partners to produce these natural maize, which are key inputs for the IPM packages here. Please. And some of the biopesticides that are basically sourced from Africa are commercialized with various private sector partners. So these are some of the products that are commercialized, and these are the statistics on the area on which these biopesticides are utilized, and by 2019. Yeah, please. And the most hot topic currently is the use of insects as food and feed, and also for fertilizers. And these are various products that we are trying to develop and then transfer it to private sector partners in the food space, where it can be consumed directly by human beings, and also in the feed space for various livestocks, and in the fertilizer space, especially the organic fast fertilizers that can come up from the insects here. So these are the locations where our beneficiaries from the insect fast fertilizers are established in East Africa. And these are the private sector companies who have basically been trained by ICP, currently engaged in recycling organic waste. So we have trained more than 57,000 people. They have established this industry in various scales, as you see here in the slide here. Thanks. Yes, please. Yeah. In terms of the other enterprise that could also be harnessed is the beekeeping and pollination services. We are doing extensively in Ethiopia with the support of MasterCard Foundation, where more than 116,000 youths have been trained on beekeeping practices. Yes, please. So similar to that, the pollination and beekeeping practices have also been scaled out in various parts of Africa. So these are the countries where we have scaled out the beekeeping and stingless bee practices. You can quickly go on. Yeah, in Ethiopia, with more than 100,000 farmers, beekeepers in East Africa, especially in Kenya, in 8 counties, with the support of European Union, Biovision and GIZ. In the various island nations of Africa, yeah, and across the continent, we are also monitoring the bee health through the support of European Union. Yeah, please. And with the support of JRS Biodiversity, we are currently trying to build capacity for monitoring the bees and their interaction with plants in Cameroon, and it's a project led by Dr. Beatrice Ganso, who is here. You can talk to her. Yeah, please. And very recently, with the BRAINS program, we are trying to extend this to 15 other African countries, especially the beekeeping, integrating with fruits and legume crops. Yeah. So all this beekeeping work started off at SAP with the next keynote speaker that we are going to hear from, Dr. Suresh Raina. He hails from Nagpur, and he has been trained in entomology and cytogenetics for his master's, and a PhD in insect neuroendocrinology. And between 1977 and 1980, he earned his postdoctoral fellowship in Canada and USDA Montana. And in 1981 to 1990, he was conferred the professorship in Nagpur. And he has established a Center for Sericulture and Biological Pest Management Research in Nagpur University. Yeah. Yes, please. So from India, he moved on to Is it moving or not? Okay, from India, in 1991 he came to ICP. So he started his work on management of locusts with the protozoans, but then he established the bee research program in the mid of 1990s, and from then on, all this work that I've been presenting is something which he started. So he was also instrumental in establishing the African Reference Laboratory for Bee Health in Africa, and he superannuated in 2018 from SAP, but he is back in Nagpur as an international advisor to the government and also to the Nagpur University for promoting bioeconomy in India, and also building the farmers there. Yeah. With that, I would like to call in Professor Suresh Raina to give his talk. Yeah, thank you.
All right. What I'm going to explain here in 15 minutes is the sustainable bioeconomy solutions for global challenges. You know that there are three types of economy. Mainly we are dealing with green economy, circular economy, and bioeconomy. They're all overlapped, right? Next slide, please. Before that, I show you that I come from this university of Nagpur. This is the administrative building. Beyond that is 317 acres campus, very big, huge campus with all the departments. Next slide, please. And this is my small center of sericulture and bioresource management research in 7 acres of land where we do sericulture, apiculture, mushroom farming, and fish farming, right, for the farmers, and we teach farmers. The school children comes just to see the technology. Next slide, please. Yes, so as I told you, there are three types of economy. Green economy is to improve human well-being and reducing environmental risks, while circular involves in sharing, repairing, recycling existing materials and products as long as possible. And bioeconomy is the use of biological resources, knowledge, time, and technology to produce goods and services in a sustainable way. Now, in this talk, we are dealing with biodiversity conservation, and this is what the topic of today. And mostly, I have just kept it very general. So, next slide, please. You can see there is an overlapping circular economy, bioeconomy, and green economy. This was recently published by Jeroen Kozon, 2024. So I just took that one. Next slide, please. If you see, there are the global bioeconomy challenges of today are the climate change, resource depletion, population growth, and environmental degradation. We have been hearing this since yesterday. And one of the approaches is the transition to a bioeconomy, which is an economic system based on sustainable use of biological resources. Well, because it integrates agriculture, it integrates forestry, fisheries, and biotechnological industries. And the best part is it works with nature rather than against it. Next slide, please. You can skip that one. One planet global solution. Yeah. So the global solutions should be environmentally sustainable, socially inclusive, economic viable, and by leveraging this potential of bio-based innovations and solutions, the growing demand and global challenges for food and materials can be fulfilled. Next slide, please. So there are three major components of bioeconomy: biological resources, which is plants, animals, microorganisms, and the sectors which are involved are agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and biotechnology. Products which are produced are food, bioenergy, bioproducts, and pharmaceuticals. Next slide, please. Now what we are going to see is that bioeconomy solutions to solve global problem. The first one is bioeconomy and climate mitigation. There is the biomass. Everybody this morning was talking about biomass and bioenergy. Can produce bioethanol and biodiesel. Carbon sequestration, example, agroforestry or afforestation, or planting the bamboos, because bamboo is the best carbon sequestration plant. And bamboo actually, it gives you in 1 acre, what we are doing back home, in 1 acre we get about 60 to 80 tons of carbon sequestered, right, in 1 acre of land. So you can get very good carbon credit if you tell the farmers to plant bamboo at the outskirts so that they can get, this is what we are doing back home. Then biomaterials is replacing plastics. That is very essential nowadays with biodegradable starches, cellulose, etc. to reduce emissions. Next slide, please. You can see the biofuels and bamboo. Bambusa is the main species that we grow there back home. And it gives very good sequestration, plus it gives good income to the farmers. Next slide. Next solution is food security and sustainable agriculture. You know, we should go for precision agriculture. Normally what happens, the pesticide people comes and the fertilizer people comes and they say, okay, spray your plant on this day completely and then put fertilizer, put this one, and that messes up the whole thing, right? What we suggest that you optimize the use of this water. First of all, optimize the use of water is very essential, because when you flood water, it goes in the river, right? Along with your pesticides and fertilizer that pollutes the river, and reducing waste and minimizing environmental impact. This is one particular thing of bioeconomy. The second one is biotechnology in agriculture. GMO crops, very essential, and CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing. You know, CRISPR-Cas9 CRISPR is clustered, repeats, interspaced, palindromic. It's a very big one. Palindromic system that it's a DNA. It's a DNA, and Cas9 is CRISPR associated protein number 9 that cuts it. CRISPR gives a guide mRNA, and Cas9 cuts the gene, incorporate the new gene inside, and you get that product. For example, what we are proposing now I propose to the donors in India to develop a transgenic silkworm. Transgenic silkworm through this technology to produce spider silk. So what we are taking the spider silk gene, putting in the silkworm's gene, I mean through microinjection eggs and all that, and then you get silk from the silkworm, which you can produce in tons and tons of silk. Because silkworm you can breed, spiders you cannot breed like that. And spider silk is 10 times stronger than this normal silk. So normally they are going to make bulletproof jacket out of it. Yes, which is very essential nowadays. Yeah, you need bulletproof jacket. So that is the whole technology. Plus we are also using human collagen gene to transfer in silkworm. So that's silkworm produces human collagen genes. Human collagen genes can be used for our tendons repair and all this. Plus the most important thing which they are making now, Japanese have done it, making a lens, eye lenses. Now normally, you know, when after cataract operation you fit the lens, which is standard lens. Standard lens cannot move. Our lens moves, that's why we can adjust. So they have to put the glasses all the time. With this one, it's a dome shaped, the one which is produced here in human collagen, and it can move. So that's the advantage of that. So because of that, it can make a big industry in Africa if they do this. Silk they produce here. The only thing is, and they have very good technology also, biotechnology, which they can do this gene editing. All right. Circular bioeconomy in food system emphasizes the efficient use of agriculture and food base. There is bioenergy, mushrooms, fertilizer, and animal feed. Mushroom can be produced with any kind of sticks of the crops, right? Oyster mushroom, for example, button mushroom can be produced, shiitake mushroom can be produced. So that gives good income to the farmers in Africa, and in our place also we are pushing it. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is what I was explaining, the CRISPR. CRISPR is the scissors. So you have seen that drought-resistant transgenic maize is produced out of this technology. Disease-resistant cassava is developed. GMO crops are developed. Next slide, please. There are only 10 GMO crops approved by the USDA. So all these are GMO crops, genetically modified crops, where the new DNA is transferred into genome of plant cells grown in tissue culture to develop into plants. Next slide, please. And this is the circular economy, a vision of sustainability. Like the cow gives cow dung, that goes in the farm, and then it becomes, I don't know why it is not clear. But then you can also use the other stuff for animal feed and other stuff. Next slide, please. This is the precision agriculture, which I have taken from African these things. And there you can produce the mushroom. Mushroom is nutritional, plus it helps it gives income, and it is done with all the waste products, right? Next. Then we come to the sustainable fisheries and marine resources. Aquaculture and sustainable fisheries is very important for bioeconomy, because pond fish culture and biofloc fish farming is very important. Shellfish, seaweed, etc., like shrimps and other things also can be done with this biofloc system. This provides stable source of protein and reduces pressure on the wild fish stock. What is happening is the people are removing the wild fish stock nowadays, everywhere. Tons and tons, right? But you have to replace it with this system of biofloc and pond fish culture to culture it and then use it. Next slide, please. This is what we are doing. This is the 10,000 liters tank, right? This 10,000 liters tank can accommodate about 1,000 tilapia, but you get only less than that. 600 kilograms are produced in 6 months by producing biofloc. Biofloc is a probiotics. It's a bacterial thing. Probiotics you put in that one with some little food. So probiotics, they transfer the feces of fish into protein. And that protein comes as a flock. This flock is eaten by the fish, and then the fish grows beautifully. So that system is good. And this is the wild fish stock, which is now going to be depleted soon. Next slide, please. Then we come to the livelihood technologies, bioenergy, biofuels from agriculture waste, which you have heard, biogas also from this, any kind of this thing waste, animal waste. Now then bioproducts, natural fibers for textile, example silk from silkworms, honey from bees, mushroom from biomass. That gives a lot of income to the farmers in Africa, and that will sustain the bioeconomy. Then we have plant-based pharmaceutical, camphor from Ocimum species. The Ocimum kilimanjaricum, this is what, when I was in ECP, we have done that. Ocimum kilimanjaricum gives you camphor. And camphors, you can make the pain balms or all those kind of things, and that gives a very good income. Also from aloe vera, you can make aloe vera gel. Very easy to grow aloe vera, and this is very good environment to grow aloe vera in Africa. And then you can get the gel, and very simple machine that converts the whole thing into a nice cream. You bottle it and you get the income. Next slide, please. Yes, you can see the biofloc, biogas. You can see the button mushroom, and that's the lion's mane mushroom. And that's a very funny mushroom. But it is very good for any kind of neurons, regeneration, rejuvenation, right? Some people, they complained about the stiffness of their foot in the morning, right? When they are above 50, 60. So that is neuropathy type of things. This one cures that. I don't say, doctor don't say. It is the Chinese who are saying this, Japanese who are using it. Then This is the button mushroom, and aloe vera. Aloe vera, you can get the cream very easily. So these are the products we can develop. Next slide, please. This is being done in India. Now this is my small research station area where we normally distribute hives to the farmers, right, to produce honey and get the income. Then there's a silkworms. We do the silk cocoons and the hanks. This is silk yarn. Either you can sell the silk yarn directly or you can make the cloth if you have power loom or hand loom. But we go up to the silk. Sorry, this is not silk yarn. This is silk cloth. That's my typing mistake. Next slide, please. Now, healthcare and biotechnology is also one of the sustainable bioeconomy solutions to solve global challenges. Bio-based pharmaceuticals require development of precision medicine. Like when somebody is suffering from a lung cancer, you don't give general this thing. You give a very precise medicine, right? So what they have done, they have seen a mutation in the EGFR, that means epidermal growth factor receptor gene in the lungs, and this can guide the treatment choices. That if you have that gene defective, that means you are suffering from lung cancer, and then FDA approved this tarlatamab. This is plant-based medicine which is used for lung cancer to treat advanced small cell lung cancer. Other plant-based compounds include Taxol analogs and vinca alkaloids used to treat lung cancer. And the best part is the silk fibroin. You know, the silkworm has silk thread. Inside is the fibroin, outside is the sericin. So silk fibroin is used to carry and deliver cisplatin. Cisplatin means chemotherapy drug. You know, that fibroin is used to carry and deliver these drugs into the system to cancer cells. Next slide, please. Now, in cardiovascular disease, there's a mutation in PCSK9, that is proprotein convertase subtilin caxin type 9 gene, and which is a novel genetic marker. If you check at the age of 40, 50, if you check this, you find the defective PCSK9 gene, you start taking the cholesterol lowering therapies to avoid the heart problem in the future. So to avoid the cardiovascular problem, you have to take this kind of medicine, and the indicator is that. And these are all plant-based medicine. Aspirin, for example, you all know it is Salix alba tree that gives you aspirin. Digoxin from digitalis, and Rizerpin for hypertension. So these are the plant-based which we can use. These plants are available in Africa. These plants are available in Asia. We can use them and grow them more so that we can produce more of these to the pharmaceuticals. Then psychiatric disorders are St. John's wort from Hypericum perforatum, ginseng, chamomile, lavender, saffron, omega-3. These are the psychiatric disorder, and these are all plant-based for sustainable bioeconomy solutions to the global challenge. Next slide, please. Now, when we go up to the synthetic biology, that's the sixth solution, is synthetic biology, engineering microorganisms to produce valuable compounds. Example, biofuels, bio-based chemicals, biobutanol. Biobutanol, any junk, you let it fertilize, it will give you biobutanol. So any waste, fruit waste or vegetable waste or any other waste, if you put and ferment it, you get biobutanol, right? And then you also can extract enzymes. You also can extract lactic acid, etc. Then therapeutics, this is very good, stem cell therapies through reprogramming host cells. And then nutrition therapy, gut microbiome, nowadays people take that. Drug therapy, recombinant DNA technology. You know that insulin. Insulin is prepared by bacteria. Yeah? It's not taken from cows or pork and other stuff, pancreas. Yeah. It is directly from the E. coli or Saccharomyces, yes, those two kind of bacteria. What you have to do simply, is you take the genes of insulin production, put it in the plasmid. Plasmid is a circular DNA, double helix, and put that plasmid in the bacteria. Then bacteria gives you a lot of mass production. All right?
Professor Suresh.
Next slide. Yes,
Professor
I'm done. The last is sustainable farming practices, agroforestry, organic farming, bioenergy, energy crops, and animal waste. All these you have already know. Next slide, please. Market access is very essential for these products. If you don't have local market development, if you don't have export opportunity, that's the big problem for any product. So you have to develop the market. Then capacity building is very essential. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So these are the challenges: limited infrastructure, access to technology, and policy. These are the three things which you find in Africa in most of the places. And the solution is that you have to develop public-private partnerships, investment in infrastructure, supportive policies and incentives. Next. Next slide. Okay, this is the beekeeping training in Ethiopia. Next slide. Now, policy initiatives, European Union bioeconomy strategy aims to create circular resource efficient economy. FAO and UNEP are promoting sustainable bioeconomy practices globally. Next slide, please. Next slide. Conclusion is that livelihood technology can significantly boost African economy, potential for sustainable development, economic growth, importance of policy support in infrastructure and community engagement. Next. Donors, government and private sector should invest in bioeconomy initiatives, support sustainable livelihood technologies, and collaborate for sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Suresh. As I welcome Dr. Ciro, Dr. Ciro Masinde is going to moderate the next session. Ciro, you can take your seat. Ciro is a Principal Research Officer at the National Museums of Kenya. He's one of the few taxonomists, plant taxonomists that we have in the continent. In East Africa, we have less than 50 taxonomists. So, Ciro, I'm not going to go into your CV. He has a very long CV and he wears many hats. So just welcome Ciro to moderate the next session.
Thank you, Julius, for that kind introduction. I will lead the next session, and it's a panel discussion. So may I request our panelists to come forward and take the front seats. We will have a discussion as a panel. We will have the audience contribute. In that way, we will have at least a balanced interaction where the audience and the panel will interact. Before we start, as you can see, it's quite a broad panel. I will briefly introduce each one of them. When I introduce you, please just raise up your hand. We will start with Dr. Beatrice Ngatso. She's a research scientist at ICIPE, but originally from Cameroon, but ICIPE, as you know, is in Kenya. She is in the environmental health team at ICIPE. And before joining ICIPE, she worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the Agricultural Research Organization, the Volcani Center in Israel. Her research examines the mechanisms underlying health and biodiversity in insect pollinators as they interact with associated biotic and abiotic stresses to improve their health. She's currently the principal investigator for a project entitled Increasing Knowledge Awareness and Data Accessibility for Bee and Dipteran Pollinators, their forage plant species to support conservation of plant-pollinator interactions in Cameroon. And this is funded by the GRS Biodiversity Foundation. So give her a clap, please. Yeah, and then the next is Dr. Anne Akol. Dr. Anne Akol is an entomologist and associate professor in the College of Natural Sciences at Makerere University. And she is a fellow of the Uganda National Academy of Sciences, a fellow of the Cambridge Commonwealth Society, and was a visiting fellow at the Norman Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture in the USA. And that was under the auspices of the Faculty Exchange Program for Africa. Her research interests encompass ecology of ecosystems for the conservation of biodiversity, ecosystem services, pollination, pest management, and agriculture. And since 2017, she's investigating insect pollinator biodiversity, mainly bees, butterflies, and moths in Uganda, again with the support of the JRS Biodiversity Foundation. Clap, please. The next is Franz Moore. He is from Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic in the DRC Congo, and he's from Atlanta, Georgia in the US. He has an MSc in International Public Health and a BSc in Psychology focused on industrial organizational psychology and artificial intelligence. He leads the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic research program management from their Chicago office, and over the last 3 years, he has been guiding data collection on health, biodiversity, and livelihoods along the Congolese coast of the Lake Tanganyika. And he's currently analyzing the extensive data sets and information to help improve the livelihoods in the Lake Tanganyika basins. And of course, he also speaks English, French, and Swahili. Clap, please. The next is Justin Kongolo Saliboko, also of the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic. And he has a degree in economics from the University Institute of Congo, and he's the focal point of the project. And over the last 3 years, he has been coordinating and leading on the ground health, biodiversity, and livelihoods data collection efforts along the coast of Lake Tanganyika in remote rural villages and peri-urban areas. He also previously worked for Dan Church Aid and the International Rescue Committee, and speaks French, English, and Swahili, plus several local dialects. Clap, please. Our next panelist is Dr. Elvina Henriette, a conservation biologist at the Center for Environment and Education, Anse Royal in Mae, Seychelles. She is the director of a nonprofit organization, Gaia Conservation Network in the Seychelles, and she is a conservation biologist with a passion for nature. Her main interest is research and conservation of the biodiversity of tropical ecosystems with the aim of addressing biodiversity loss, climate change impacts, and ecosystem restoration through practical measures for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and biological resources. She has expertise in biodiversity inventories, restoration of degraded ecosystems, and population recovery of endangered island bird populations. And she's also interested in conservation education and finding ways to communicate science to the people and engaging them in environmental issues to build ecological awareness and appreciation for the local environment. A clap, please. Then we have Mrs. Maria Mira from UNEP, Climate Finance Unit in Kenya. Maria joined Climate Finance Unit of UNEP in 2021. She specializes in sustainable livelihoods and ecopreneurship and works on the Restoration Factory Initiative, a capacity building program in sustainable entrepreneurs in Brazil, Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Maria holds a master's degree in development studies from the Institute of Development Studies, where she previously worked as a research assistant, and she's fluent in English and Portuguese, and is committed to locally led change. A clap, please. Then finally, we have Mr. Jadot Nkurunziza, the CEO of SANU Concern 2, an association in Burundi. The SANU Concern 2, French, it means it concerns all of us. It's an association that has championed several programs on climate change adaptation and mitigation, environmental conservation, particularly reforestation, and youth mobilization. He started the movement at 16 years, and has facilitated the planting of over 70 million trees and built a network of over 100 forums across Burundi. As a result of these initiatives, he has received several awards from governments, NGOs, and international organizations for the relentless contribution in building a green Burundi. He has represented the youth at COP 24, 25, and 26 of the CBD, and he's only 30 years old and holds a BA in environmental management. So as you can see, we have quite a broad, diverse panel, and we will go straight to the questions. I would like you as the panel to give us your thoughts on how readily available and accessible is biodiversity data in required formats, quality, quantity, and coverage. So for example, even if you were to get the data, does it adhere to FAIR principle? Is it findable? Is it accessible? Is it interoperable? That means, can it be exchanged between computer systems and retain the same meaning? Is it reusable? Have somebody put there a license that says do not use at all, or is it open license, and those kind of issues? Because as we heard from the panels in the morning, there was a question, there was a comment from the Executive Director of the African Academy of Sciences about whether the data is available and whether it's accessible, both across the whole spectrum of the ecosystem level to the organismal level of macro, micro, to the genetic level, to the proteins and any other. Because if we do not have the data, and if it's not available, accessible, findable, and all that, then we may be having an uphill task. So I will start by asking Franz for your opinion, please. There's another mic.
Hey everyone, great question, Zero. So I think kind of breaking into two parts. With accessibility, there's this really great platform called GBIF that JRS actually introduced us to, which is open access, and anyone can upload data when coordinating with the GBIF team. And then it's open access. You can select which license you want and so on, which really just opens up at a global level the accessibility of this data. In terms of availability, I think it's very context specific. Where we work in the DRC, there's very limited biodiversity data, which is strange considering Lake Tanganyika is considered a biodiversity hotspot. So you think there would be more, and the reason why there isn't is because it's a very complex area to work. So not a lot of people are able to get into these communities, get into these areas to collect this data. And then also there's this kind of mismatch of alignment. So with the local population, they're very much interested in their health, their livelihoods. And so to try to get them interested in champion and voicing biodiversity conservation and data collection is very difficult. And so from a kind of international perspective, you really have to offer something in exchange to be able to successfully collect this data. And I'll leave it there. I'll keep it brief so the other panelists can hop in.
Okay, thank you for that experience from Lake Tanganyika and at access level at the global level. May I ask LA, what is your experience from the island nation of the Seychelles?
Yes, hi everybody. I will share my an experience from the Seychelles. Okay, you can hear me now. Yes. Of course, it's important to know what is available, and very often we find out that we don't know what information are out there. That is why last Friday in the Seychelles, we had to bring stakeholders from the biodiversity conservation field together for us to discuss the existing data sets, for us to be able to update our National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan under the Convention for Biological Diversity. So bringing them together gave us an insight into what types of databases exist, what are the population trends, the status, the threats, so that we can then set different biodiversity targets for us to be able to meet our objectives under various conventions. So the fact that we had to bring all of those stakeholders together and identify them, which is a lot of work, of course, shows that we did not really have a good knowledge of what data sets are available. And this is primarily because we don't have a mechanism or a platform that make it an obligation for organizations to submit information about their data sets. So this brings us also to whether the data is accessible. If there's no centralized database management systems, then sometimes it's very difficult for you to get access to this kind of information. And here government can really play a role in terms of encouraging organizations to make data available, to share the data, because there's a lot of benefits in sharing data, not only amongst the scientific communities, but also with the public, and in a form that the public can understand. Especially if we're talking about digital transparency, we need to be able to put the information out there and in a language that the layman can understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So obviously data has sort of like the new currency, and I would like Anne to give us a perspective of your experience.
I would say even with platforms like GBIF, even within there is a lot of variability on what's available. There is more so for certain groups, taxa, for regions than other regions, like Africa is severely data deficient. There is more on the larger animals and plants, less so for invertebrates. I remember the challenges I've had, just getting what is already known and what isn't there. So this is a very variable thing. It's a case-by-case context. In terms of accessibility, there are constraints on due to people holding them as individual holdings, institutional constraints on data sharing. So again, accessibility is a problem. But even when you access, you may find that it's in formats that are not easily interoperable. And then systemic challenges like taxonomic expertise, interest for people. There's more interest, say, in fisheries than, say, in snails, for instance.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I can see.
I'd just like to add a little bit on that. I think in terms of accessibility or availability, I think I would say that biodiversity data are available because you have these global platforms such as GBIF, eNaturalis, that are user-friendly, in the sense that they have a system called API, which is Application Programming Interface, that allows you to exchange knowledge or data between different software. Like, let's say you want to know maybe you have a species of interest and you want to map it, like to look his distribution over the world, you can do that in those global biodiversity platforms. But at the same time, we also have biodiversity data at the national level through national museums. But then the problem of quality comes in. Like my interaction, I am an entomologist by training, and my interaction with a bee taxonomist, he said about more than 50% of bee species identified in Central Africa are wrongly identified. So there is that issue of quality that is questionable. So it is good that we improve on that in the continent. And like Anne said, there is also an issue of the contribution in in those global biodiversity platform. You see that for insects, North America is championing in terms of the documentation of biodiversity. You see that in eNaturalist, you have about more than 3 million insect species that are recorded, and the contribution of Africa is only 2%. And if you go to eNaturalist, you have more than 50 million of insects reported, but in Africa, our contribution is only 6%. It means there's a lot we need to do to improve on our the availability of data that biodiversity data that exists in Africa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those insights. I get the impression that there is very little data that is actually available, and whatever the repositories that they are, when you go there, there is always other challenges, either in terms of the amount, and from your experiences, we still have some work to do. So I will move on to the next question, and it would be how can we use biodiversity data to promote innovation in the bioeconomy products and services? So if we have all this data, what can we do with it? How can we engineer it so that we actually make use of it to boost the bioeconomy? And I would like to start off with Justin, if you can give us your thoughts on what could be done.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I can say that biodiversity data represent a gold mine for innovation in the bioeconomy. Using this information, I think it can be possible to develop new products and services that are sustainable and efficient. For that, I can take one example according to or based on our survey during the 3 years past. During our data collection on household surveys, several families, they could not afford to go to health center for malaria treatment because they were lack of money. So they were able to afford to traditional treatment and using medicinal plants. And now, you can see generally these medicinal plants are used by traditional healers. And why not, if improving the access to this biodiversity data, hopefully that it could help the conservation of these species plants, and hopefully identify new plants, space that can help to create a health better product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being specific that at least the people in around Lake Tanganyika have used the data. I would like to get another perspective from somewhere else. Maybe Maria, you could share your thoughts from the global to the local level.
Of course. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I agree with Julius. It's really a gold mine, and we see this in the work that we do with the Restoration Factory, where we work on capacity building for sustainable entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are working in bioeconomy, and they're creating solutions that are data-driven. We see this in Latin America, where we worked with entrepreneurs in the Amazon, and the focus of this program was the development of sustainable entrepreneurship focused on bioeconomy. We had almost every single source of bioeconomy that Dr. Suresh mentioned, and so it really is a representation of the work that UNEP is doing on bioeconomy. Bioeconomy and this biodiversity data offers an opportunity for us to look for alternative livelihoods and to move away from detrimental economic sources. And so for us at UNEP, we're working in Tanzania, looking at entrepreneurs in the Lake Rukwa Basin and looking for them to develop alternative sources of income as well. Beekeeping is very popular there, and so it seems to be a kind of common source of income that we're looking to promote. And so it's just really, there's an incredible opportunity here. We just need to tap into it, and we need to make this data available to small-scale entrepreneurs as well. As the panelists were saying earlier today, SMEs are the crux of most economies globally, and they need to have access to data. And in order for that to be the case, this data needs to be open source because they don't have the resources to gather this data themselves, and so we need to capacitate them as well, so that when they do receive the data, they can understand it. So yeah, it really is a gold mine, and there's a huge opportunity.
Great to hear about the gold mine, but a gold mine which is sitting dormant does not bring that gold and wealth. So let's hear from another perspective, and may I request Anne, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I entirely agree with the previous speakers. What I would like to add is that we as the scientists, first we need to demonstrate the utility and function of these resources. That way you arouse the interest in people making use of them, developing the innovations. And then that will also drive the need to know more about these resources. Where do they occur? What do they do? Are they related, alternative resources? But also, from what we already know, let's say from indigenous knowledge, say beekeeping, then that arouses the interest in what else can we get from related resources. So it's a bit to me like a chicken and egg story. Do you first, when you get the data, do you demonstrate its utility and function and potential economic value? Or we take from the value side, the bioeconomy side, people are growing avocado for oil, then you ask what else could give us oil of comparable value? And then you begin to drive the data, generate data from alternative resources. So I think it's both. It's not a linear road, it's more like back and forth.
Thank you. I would like to first hear from Ele. Yes. You are doing very interesting things in the Seychelles and ecotourism and education. How are you able to do all these innovations? And I mean, we all know Seychelles is like the Garden of Eden for tourism. You know? Please.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, there's still a lot of scopes to do many things. However, I'd like to talk a bit about, for instance, in Seychelles, we are focusing a lot on the blue economy because we are surrounded by the sea, and in terms of the blue economy, we're trying to look at sustainable ways for us to use our marine resources for the economy. But at the same time, we need to look at ways to remove pressure from those biodiversity, example through fisheries. And that's why we're looking at aquaculture as an alternative. And there are a lot of people, even the locals, who are interested in aquaculture. And we've been looking at species like the mangrove blue crab, the freshwater prawns or crayfish, the mangrove snappers. But the problem here is that we need information on the wild stocks, as sources for the aquaculture. And there were investigations that were done, for instance, for the mangrove blue crab, whereby they realized that the stock was limited in order for us to kickstart aquaculture. But then it begs the question of what measures can we put in place to enhance the wild stocks that can then create business opportunities and alternative livelihoods for the locals. And this is the same for tilapia as well, which we're not really looking into, but there is limited interest in using tilapia in aquaculture so that we can remove the pressures from fisheries. Another example will be carbon credits. We've done mapping of our seagrasses and mangroves, and we need to look into whether it's viable to take it into the carbon market. And in Seychelles, we're also doing a lot of work on forest restoration. And these sites are good carbon sequestration sites that can be considered for the carbon credits. So here are the other potentials that we have. And earlier, Professor Suresh mentioned bamboo. Bamboo farming is something that we're not really looking into it, but we're using it on our restoration sites. So again, it creates this opportunity for us to go further. Yeah.
Thank you for the insights. And Beatrice, you'd like to comment?
I just want to add to what my colleague said about when we have knowledge about the biodiversity data that we have, it can lead to market opportunities or what you call livelihood opportunities. I will take an example. For instance, it can through biodiversity data, you'll be able to pinpoint which species are underutilized in a specific environment. And this is what we are capitalizing on, because in the sector of beekeeping, for instance, we know that in Africa we have about 11 honeybee subspecies, but they are underutilized compared to Europe. Most of the time, our local farmers or the beekeepers, they are keeping the bees because they think that it only provides the product like the honey, wax, and so forth. But then we are capitalizing on that to kind of bridge the gap. How can we incorporate that knowledge into improving our crop production? Because in developing countries, people keep bees because they want to enhance their crop productivity. And the value of bee in terms of pollination is more than 300 times higher than the benefit that we get from their products. So we work around that, but at the same time, how can we use the bees or their forage plant to enhance the quality of our environment, thereby mitigating impact of climate change? So I think knowledge on biodiversity can lead to improving livelihood opportunities for our local community and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, in your discussion, some of you have mentioned carbon credits. That is what we know a lot, but there is also biodiversity credits, which is something fairly new. I would like to know, is that being developed in any of your countries? Do you know how that is going, biodiversity credits?
For now, in Cameroon, I don't think that they are getting towards that direction, because in my project, I had a recent policy workshop with policymakers from different ministries, and they are not looking into that direction for now.
Thank you. Maria, maybe you can, do you have any insights? You are looking at the global, continental. Do you know what's happening with the biodiversity credits?
There is a lot that's happening with biodiversity credits, you're correct. I will refrain from speaking on UNEP's perspective of this, and this is just because we are still working on our carbon and biodiversity credit positioning. there's a lot of opportunity for biodiversity credits and to use nature as a resource. It is also important to realize that nature is not only a resource and also has value, intrinsic value associated to it, and it's especially important to highlight this when working with local communities in different parts of the world that associate different types of value to nature. And so it's also important to kind of keep in mind as we're talking about bioeconomy, the value of nature, biodiversity credits, that there's also intrinsic value to nature that is important to highlight here. But I can speak a little bit on the European perspective where biodiversity credits are gaining a lot of popularity. I see this amongst my colleagues who are working with the European Commission, where there are more and more projects that are being funded to identify the best way forward for biodiversity credits. And so hopefully in the next few years, we'll see a change in policy which allows for a greater protection and valuing of nature.
Thank you. And I will also like our panelists, Jadot, to give us some insights on the innovations and the use of biodiversity data. Jadot is not very good in English, so excuse his English if it's not very good, but he can also maybe speak in French, and maybe somebody can tell us, translate here. Please.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Moi c'est Jadot Nkurunziza. Je viens du Burundi. Je représente une association qui s'appelle Ça nous concerne tous.
Okay.
So he's saying he's Jadot Nkurunziza. He is the leader of Ça nous concerne tous, an NGO nationally recognized in Burundi.
Quand j'avais 7 ans ou 8 ans, j'étais dans le mouvement des scouts du Burundi et on nous a enseigné l'importance de la protection de l'environnement et l'importance de plantation des arbres.
So he's been active in environmental movement since the age of 8, when he was in the Scout movement and received environmental education.
Quand j'ai monté à l'intérieur du pays, j'ai vu le changement parce que moi j'ai grandi dans la ville de Bujumbura.
And he resides in Bujumbura and has seen many changes in the environment over the years.
Et le fondateur du mouvement scout, il a laissé un message en disant « Tâchez de quitter cette terre, à rien rendu meilleur puisque vous l'avez trouvé. Tâchez de quitter cette terre, à rien rendu meilleur puisque vous avez trouvé. » Yeah.
Vous pouvez répéter s'il vous plaît?
Tâchez de quitter cette terre, à rien rendu meilleur puisque vous l'avez trouvé.
Tâchez de quitter cette terre en la rendant meilleure que ce que vous avez trouvé avant.
Ouais.
So, in French, in English. Yeah. So, better than you find it. You find the earth.
Et quand j'ai entendu ce message, j'avais 9 ans et je me suis pensé, qu'est-ce que moi je peux changer dans mon pays?
And so he took this to heart and really put it into practice to see what he could improve in his country.
Vous allez voir dans les photos, nous avons planté plus de 70 millions de plants dans 18 provinces qui composent notre pays.
So he's going to just show a few photos in which he has led reforestation efforts in the 17 provinces of Burundi.
Nous sommes plus de 2500 jeunes dans tout le Burundi et nous faisons des activités chaque samedi.
So every Saturday, there is a network of 2,500 volunteers that get together, and they are involved in planting of trees and shrubs. And he says they have attained 70 million plantings.
Nous avons l'initiative de changer l'image de notre pays en plantant les arbres. Il y a les montagnes qui surplombent les villes, les montagnes qui sont déboisées. Vous allez voir, là c'est à Bujumbura, ce sont des montagnes qui sont déboisées, où nous sommes en train de travailler pour changer l'image de ces montagnes.
And they've really managed to change the image of the country, and you can see the greening in many areas where they've worked.
Et nous sommes des jeunes seulement, et nous travaillons avec le gouvernement du Burundi et et quelques organisations internationales.
They use contacts within the Burundian government to mobilize students and young people in schools, of course, and also partnering with other NGOs.
Ce que nous faisons trois choses. Nous faisons la plantation, la multiplication des arbres et la distribution à toute la population qui en a besoin.
So not only do they do the actual planting, but they operate nurseries and the distribution of seedlings.
So, le message que je voulais partager est que essayons de travailler en tant que jeunes, parce que si on travaille en tant que jeunes, il y aura le changement dans l'avenir.
And this shows the importance of working with youth, even the very young, because they can really, really change things on the ground for positive change.
Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Jadot, for that message. We will continue with the panel discussion. And the next question is on what role does indigenous knowledge play in the bioeconomy, and how can we integrate it with modern scientific data? I think from the discussions, earlier panels, and many speakers before, they have all talked about recognizing indigenous knowledge, of which Africa is very rich in, how we can integrate that with the modern scientific data and make use of it and not look at it as a backward. I will start with Beatrice, if you can give us some insights, please.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril. I think from the discussion we had yesterday, I'm saying that indigenous communities plays a really high level in global bioeconomic discussion, CBD discussion. And this is simply because there are really high statistics indicating that at least 25% of our tropical and subtropical forests are managed by these indigenous people. At the same time, around a quarter of the world land area is managed by them. It simply means that this statistic kind of highlight their critical role in environmental stewardship. So, so what is the way, how can we integrate the indigenous people who have been neglected for long into our modern science or bioeconomy? I think one way is through conducting research together, like incorporating the local community into our research, such that both knowledge system, that is the indigenous knowledge system, but also the scientific knowledge system contribute to biodiversity conservation. At the same time, what I'm doing in the project is also educational programs involving the local communities, like we teach them about our science, and at the same time we learn their indigenous practices. And by doing so, you are kind of encouraging mutual understanding and respect. They say at the same time, we need to, because we said the diversity of indigenous knowledge is huge, especially in our African context. So at the same time, I think there is a need that we document this indigenous knowledge, because most of the time they are not documented along our scientific result. And by doing so, you kind of create like a global understanding of bioeconomy initiative. And also what I've seen so far is that in Africa, we need, not only in Africa, but we also need to create kind of policy to support their right on land management and resource management, because we see our government grabbing their land for infrastructural development. I think there is a need to come up with policies that support their right. And by doing so, we kind of highlight their critical role in achieving the CBD biodiversity target. So that is my opinion. And at the same time, for all of this to be really effective, we also need to diversify their livelihood income, because this local community depend on the forest to earn a living. So there is need, how can we diversify their income to reduce the pressure that they exert on land? So thank you. That is my addition.
Thank you for the insights. I would like to get some insights from Justin, because you said you're working in really remote villages, and as we know, the more remote you are, the more rich the indigenous knowledge. Exactly. Please.
Exactly. We are working in a very remote area, and sometimes it's difficult to access according to the complexity of logistics on that area. TR Congo is not easy, specifically on the lake side, the coast of Lake Tanganyika. But Lake Tanganyika Floating Earth Clinic, the small organization, do the best and try to reach all these remote communities. I really relate to what Beatrice has said right now, and specifically I will be based on our researches we have done, and there we were working with fishermen while we were trying to collect fish data, and from this focus group we were discussing with them, we were collecting many information on terms of fish management. Truly speaking, they gave some ideas from their own how they can manage the biodiversity in terms of fishing. So I think this information, once they are collected and we try to make policies about it, it can help. However, we need to share also this information with themselves. The other thing is that once we collect this information, we keep for hours instead of sharing what we have collected from these guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those insights. I will go to the next question. And it is, in your experience, how might we integrate biodiversity informatics in local and global bioeconomy policy or strategy discussions? Because as we were told, we can talk as scientists or as experts, but it just remains with us. If it's not getting to those who are making the decisions and driving policy, then it just remains like some intellectual discussions for people, and which cannot really be brought to the ground. I will ask Maria to give us some insights.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I would firstly apologize because I called Justin Julius. Sorry for that. Now, when you were speaking, what I was thinking is something that hasn't been mentioned yet. It's access to finance. I think when we say show me the money and we ask people in the financial sector to step in, policy will follow, because there is a financial benefit to bioeconomy, and there's a financial benefit to including indigenous communities, for example, and indigenous knowledge in this space. I wanted to briefly just touch on a point of the question earlier and give an example of the work that we do in Brazil, where again we worked in the Amazon and we worked with indigenous communities and projects led by indigenous people. We worked with a really interesting project on ecotourism led by an indigenous community in the Amazon. And what we decided to do through this project was provide them with a special award at the end of the program, which was a cash prize. What we think needs to happen is a greater investment from the financial sector, but also from the private and public sectors in indigenous solutions and bioeconomy. And this is another way of helping them catalyze their solutions and bring the information that they're collecting and gathering to the rest of the world, and hopefully inform global and local policy. So I would say that in terms of, from our perspective at the Climate Finance Unit, UNEP, there really needs to be a shift in the financial sector as well as the policy, because once you start showing governments that there's money to be made, they'll start making the policies that they need to make.
Thank you. I would like to get Franz perspective from the Lake Tanganyika Floating Clinic and globally, what do you think?
Yeah, so to kind of add to what Justin said earlier, working with locals and making sure that we transfer that knowledge and that learning back to those communities, we implement that by having people like Justin on our team who are very in tune to the communities. And then also we work with locals to generate reports that we then have those locals hand deliver to officials and present them in meetings. So for example, there's the Lake Tanganyika Authority, which is this body which oversees the fisheries of Lake Tanganyika, since it's a trans-boundary zone between 4 countries. And so instead of me showing up to that meeting and presenting to the LTA as someone from the US, we work with a fisheries biologist who's from Uvira, which is a city on Lake Tanganyika, who goes and presents our findings to those authorities, and they respect that and they uptake our suggestions and our conclusions on our data a lot smoother, I suppose, because it's coming from someone from their area. It's an interesting cultural thing that I think is not always acknowledged when doing this type of work.
Okay, thank you for the perspective. I think we are running out of time. I would like to give this opportunity to the audience to respond very quickly, and then we will give you an opportunity to give your takeaway message. So please, a few questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Aissata Sanogo. I come from Mali. I have my master's degree in biodiversity and environment. Now I'm recently PhD student in ICP in entomology and climate change. Now I speak in French. Ma question est adressée au monsieur du Burundi. Moi, je viens du Mali, qui est un pays du Sahel, et tout le monde sait que le Sahel est très touché par la sécheresse et surtout les causes du changement climatique. Je suis aussi une jeune engagée, je fais du bénévolat concernant la biodiversité et le changement climatique dans mon pays. Je fais partie d'un groupe de jeunes qui s'appelle Jeunes Voix du Sahel. On est...
So she's from Mali. She's asking a question to Jadot specifically about reforestation, because in Mali they suffer from water scarcity and drought. And she has organized a group of volunteers that are taking action.
Young Voice from the Sahel. Ce groupe de jeunes, on est surtout soutenu par UNICEF. On fait du bénévolat et on fait... comment je vais dire?
Ouais.
On fait surtout...
Sensibilisation.
Non, pas la sensibilisation.
Action.
Des actions, oui, des actions, des sensibilisations, mais aussi on prend la parole pour sensibiliser tous les jeunes du Sahel.
Manifestation.
Non, pas manifestation.
Ouais.
Du plaidoyer.
Ouais.
Voilà, on fait du plaidoyer, des actions concernant tous les pays du Sahel. C'est surtout pour inviter la population à s'intéresser à tout ce qui concerne la protection de la biodiversité. Actuellement, le Mali est en train de perdre sa biodiversité parce que déjà les gens ne connaissent pas l'importance de la protection de l'environnement. Ils coupent les arbres pour avoir du charbon de bois afin de faire la cuisine. Maintenant, lui, il vient de dire qu'ils sont surtout basés sur les plantations d'arbres. Je peux comprendre que votre pays, vous avez plus d'arbres par rapport à nous. Oui. Quelles solutions vous pouvez nous dire pour qu'on puisse vraiment initier la population malienne à planter les arbres comme la façon dont vous faites? On le fait surtout vers les écoles, en fait, les écoles dans les zones rurales.
I'll request that you will.
Yes,
we will take the questions and we will answer all at the same time. Okay, please.
Thank you. My question, it was not a question, it was a comment. Maybe it will answer to this question. In context in small countries like Burundi, so how the biodiversity should contribute efficiently in bioeconomy. We are talking about One Health, good for human being, good for animals, good for environmental. So it's an advice, maybe for Mali or for Burundi, or there is we have to make choices because the forests are not no more natural now like it was. So I was discussing with Jado. I said now we have to choose some trees to plant and to bring people to plant trees which are good for food, good for like anti-erosive like anti-erosion, and good for animals. And it's possible. And also, I have a question to my sister scientist, David. You know, you are talking about evidence, scientific evidence, when we talk about traditional medicine. It's good, but we are in Africa. We have traditional knowledge and knowledge, and okay, no one can't come and say, okay, this plant is no more good for you, as that communities know that it's good for them, from themselves. I will need scientific to improve for that. You know that in COVID, how people use this traditional medicine. And there was, okay, good.
There's one question from our keynote speaker.
Okay, yeah. Then
But
I can ask it in French if you like.
Okay,
Yeah.
but let me read in English
Read
first.
it in English first. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is to you, that in Burundi, if you have planted 70 million trees, have you ever thought of getting the carbon credit from the global carbon market to boost the indigenous economy? Because you can produce 140 million tons of carbon and you can earn about $280 million per year. I have just calculated.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent, thank you.
Because I was in the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Been a very exciting day. I have two contributions, and the first one has to do with the data sets. My name is Olusegun Folorunso. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a professor of computer science. Talking of informatics, cannot run away from the use of data sets. Thank God you mentioned FAIR, which has been a very good one that we take care of when talking of data sets. I want to say now that we lack repository for data set in Africa. If we want to make use of any data set, at times we model and simulate to generate certain results for the sales support systems. But most of these data sets are downloaded from Kaggle site, and most of these things are not our own, from our own environment that will solve our local problems in Africa. So I want to say that, is there a way we can come up together, possibly with support, and having this quality data set being stored somewhere, so that some of us that are researchers will have instant access to it, even when that data set they are being uploaded, we are alerted, so that people from different fields will be able to know which one that is necessary for their research. And that is my first contribution. So if we can have that, thank God, even Elsevier, they have a publication now, they call it Data in Brief. And that has been some of the supporting repository that we are using now. But it will be very nice in Africa if we have a very good repository that people can download their data set from. Quality one that has that FAIR attributes. that we can use to support our research work. And the last one has to do with what we're talking about, this indigenous knowledge. I want us to go back to it. I want to say that from our local villages, our elderly ones, most of them are dying, and they are dying with those knowledge. You have a way of keeping this knowledge so that we can continue to use them. Let me give you an instance. If you have a poultry farm and we have this these Newcastle diseases, they have a way of taking care of that. In the olden days, they put on ripe pepper, papaya, you put in water, they give to, and then those birds, they are safe. And those things are not in place now. If you talk of poultry farm, you know, snakes are always there. They have plants they put together to throw snakes away. So some of these things, I think, with technology, we can put Web 2.0, knowledge sharing. Thank you very much.
Now, there are so many questions. I will probably just give one last one very quickly, and then we...
Okay, thank you. My name is Onditi. I'm from Kenya. My concern is about the emerging issues on bioeconomy. It is an area that is attracting the private sector participation in terms of investment. And I think here there is no any private sector was invited to see what are the opportunity coming up with the bioeconomy so that they start preparing on how to invest. The issue of data, I give you an example even in my own country. I've been a leader of a private sector in the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a national chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a leader of the Lake Region Private Sector Foundation, which is carrying about 12 countries. Getting a data, even from the government, it is a preserve. Now, with bioeconomy, is there a way the capacity building can be carried to create a center where a data can be accessed by any individual, any citizen who want to venture into bioeconomy? That is one thing. The secondly is how do we enhance our university? Because in Kenya, most of every county, we have got 47 counties. Every county there is a university. This university need to make a change in those areas in terms of research, innovation and development for us to achieve the meaningful of entering into bioeconomy. Is there a way how the university could be brought together in this such a kind of a forum for them to understand that they play a key role in terms of research?
Okay, thank you. I think we will stop there with the questions. It means that the panel really excited everyone, which is good. But every nice thing has to come to an end. Now, I'm going to give the panelists opportunities to respond. Some questions were directed at an individual, but I would like you to be as brief as possible. And I would like to request that we may not be able to exhaust those answers here. You have seen the panelists, you know them. We can continue the conversation after these. So, very quick to the panel, and I would like to start. Who is going to start? Okay. Now, very quick, brief.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Merci ma sœur. Félicitations pour les efforts, dit Marie. Et aussi, à ce que je peux vous répondre, c'est que il faut essayer de commencer. Sans le commencement, il n'y a pas le développement. Et quand tu commences, tu vas avoir beaucoup de problèmes. Et en travaillant, il y aura des solutions. Ce que je peux vous proposer, c'est de passer par les écoles, mobiliser les jeunes des écoles, des écoles primaires et des écoles secondaires. Pourquoi pas aller dans les cadres des militaires, travailler avec les militaires, travailler avec les policiers, travailler avec les associations qui travaillent au Mali, et vous allez voir les résultats. Parce que le problème que nous avons, nous les jeunes, nous avons le problème de penser au flanc, à l'argent. Je ne peux pas faire cette activité sans avoir l'argent. Mais quand tu penses à l'argent, au lieu de penser les résultats qui vont vous amener au développement, il n'y aura pas le développement. Mais essayez de commencer et à ne pas penser de l'argent, parce que l'argent va venir avec les résultats que vous allez montrer. Merci.
Okay, just for the English speakers, he's really excited that you've started. The most important thing is to start to reach out, to organize maybe schools, young people, but also other government partners. So he mentioned the police, even military bases, anyone that has access to tools, experience, can be a partner. And the last point was very important. Don't wait for funding. Start. Just start, and little by little you can piece together the
Je vais
resources.
répondre à Soulech. En commençant, nous avons commencé quand nous étions encore des enfants. Nous avons planté dans beaucoup de provinces, mais nous avons trouvé des difficultés. In Burundi, we cut the trees and on utilise le charbon pour cuire les aliments. Et il n'y a pas de gaz, avant il n'y avait pas de gaz, il n'y avait pas aussi des autres pour aider à la cuisson des aliments. Et on coupait facilement les arbres. Et nous avons pensé pourquoi on coupe chaque fois les arbres. Et nous avons approché le gouvernement du Burundi. Je profite de cette opportunité pour remercier son Excellence, Monsieur le Président. Il nous a accueillis. Nous avons demandé de mettre des lois qui aident la population à ne pas couper les arbres. Il faut demander d'abord la permission au gouvernement avant de couper l'arbre. Et aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup d'arbres qui sont poussés. Nous sommes en train de voir comment on peut approcher les gens du carbone, et ça va passer parce que nous avons beaucoup d'arbres qui sont déjà poussés. Merci beaucoup. Et je remercie les gens du Kenya parce que je suis de près les activités ici au Kenya. Je suis votre président Ruto. Il organise souvent des plantations des arbres. Et j'ai vu les militaires qui ont planté les arbres comme au Sahara. J'ai même la photo, je vais vous partager. Et c'est là où j'ai aimé les activités ici en Afrique. Il y a des gouvernements qui sont en train de changer le comportement des individus qui ne comprennent pas le changement climatique et la biodiversité. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, in brief, in summary, the biggest struggle he had at the national level was to get policies to limit deforestation, the main driver of which is fuel wood. And they have worked on that with some success, and now they are in the process of advocating that they take advantage of other processes such as carbon credit.
Okay, I think I will just allow 2 more responses, otherwise.
I'll try to be very brief, but in regards to data, I think it would be great if there were more open access data points that kind of connect different data that's collected from different organizations. I think this is very difficult at the moment because a lot of data is kind of locked behind funders. Something that's been great about working with GRS is they encouraged us to publish our data on open access platforms. And if someone were to create a tool that kind of connected these different open access platforms, that could be really useful. In regards to specifically the data and related to the bioeconomy, I think that could be done if there was a grant maker that gave a grant specifically for that, kind of collating these different data sets and putting them into a larger database and so on. And then kind of quickly, underneath all of that, there is this big issue with data inputs. There are a lot of data gaps from communities. It's one of the reasons we decide to go straight to the household level, because even though there are some systems in the DRC to collect health-related data from health centers and so on, there are really big data gaps in health. Like Justin mentioned, some people who get malaria, they don't even go to the health center because they can't afford it. Those cases aren't reported. What happens to those people if they die from malaria, that's not reported. And so there's this really big data gap there, and I imagine that's similar across a number of different sectors.
Okay, one more, and then we close.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that with the role of indigenous knowledge, we need to document, as Beatrice said, but we also need to validate it, as well as think about intellectual property rights and benefit sharing for these people who are the authors of this indigenous knowledge. That's important. In terms of getting this informatics into policy and strategy, I think we need to communicate to the policymaker, the people who act, because I've seen many examples where they don't even know these things exist. Then they say, how would we use it if we didn't know about it? So communication of science findings is important. Finally, yes, as Franz said, the sustainability of creating our own little portals here and there is a big issue. So as JRS has always advised, let's make use of what's existing, but let's put more there, because you'll create the infrastructure, and then what do you put there? We don't have the capacity to do so. So training is important. Coming from universities, there needs to be specific training to allow people to start to generate the data, use it, show its utility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we are just closing. I would like 2 panel members to volunteer. What message would you like us to go? What is your parting shot? Just the first 2 that volunteer, I'll give the opportunity. Okay, you want to start? In less than...
À ce que je peux dire à ma sœur, c'est pas l'âge ou le niveau qui fait l'homme, mais c'est son expérience qui dégage. Merci beaucoup.
Okay. No, we don't want an exchange.
That was really for her.
Oh, okay.
So
all right,
give
so
the other one, yeah.
the 2, okay. What do you want the audience to go home? What will we remember? We have talked about many things. Yeah. So who is the first? Okay, and then you next, and then we will go.
Okay, my takeaway message will be if we really want, or effectively, if we want to effectively leverage on the nexus of bioinformatics and bioeconomy, I think there is a need to prioritize collaboration between the different stakeholders, bringing on board the policymakers, the indigenous people, the private sectors, to discuss about this biodiversity data, their importance, and how they can leverage on it to design policy that are tailored to the needs of the local people. That is what I was saying. Thank you.
Yes, there's a lot of merit to work with local communities in terms of data collection, so that they can understand why the data is being collected, and they can also participate in analyzing the data and also bringing forward recommendations from those data collection and taking it to government or policymakers. So if this is done by the local community, then there's more buy-in from local community, because it's them who did the work with the scientists and taking it to the policymakers, and then they can easily implement whatever policies will come from that because it came from them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those closing remarks. And at this point, I would like to thank the panel. I would like to thank the audience for your participation, and let's give the panel a clap and give ourselves a clap, and then I am handing over to...
Thank you, Dr. Siro. Let's give him a big clap for organizing this panel discussion very effectively. And I'd like to just request Matthew and also the panelists, let's have a quick group photo before I give out the summary, and then you do a conclusion. Yeah. I was given the task of summarizing, so I'd like to just summarize in few bullets. Yes, we are biodiverse and we have a lot of opportunity to cash on it, but if we want to achieve that, we need to focus on issues like transformative research, especially when you say indigenous knowledge. This indigenous knowledge has been tested for thousands of years by people, and when we say it is not scientifically tested, we are doing it wrong. We have not tested it scientifically. That's the whole thing. Yeah. So we are not engaged in testing it with the right science, but this has been tested by community. So transformative research on how we transfer this indigenous knowledge, building capacity for people to change this biodiversity into bioeconomic potential, and also policies, critical one, and as Prof indicated, linkages to market are very crucial. In all this space, data is crucial, and when data comes into play, for me, I'm not I would like to say that let's not tell the people that yes, what we are going to do with the data. Let's try to get the people also to be aware of it and contribute to data collection. That's what is citizen science, where we need to start looking at how best we can engage the community to even collect the data so that they own the data and they also understand the value of that data and the biodiversity that can come. And with those few words, I'd like to give my the opportunity to Matthew, who has passionately supported us in this workshop, and I would like to also thank Matthew for the translation. That was very nice of you. Yeah, thank you.
Huge thanks to the moderator, Ciro, to our esteemed keynote speaker, and of course to the 7 panelists. I think the examples were magnificent. We really got into the heart of involving communities and really going to where the need is greatest in rural areas where livelihoods are most needed. So thanks for the targeted messages and the great examples. This was one of the most dynamic sessions, I think, of this conference. Thanks so much.
Let's give a big hand. I think let's give a big hand as a group, including the audience, the panelists, everyone. Thank you.